to explore. What are we exploring here? We're not here to gain any kind of specialized knowledge, be it esoteric or spiritual or mundane, because all knowledge is always relative. We're really here to discover, underneath all the knowledge, all the experiences, all the conditioning, all the ideas and concepts, there's really a being here. There really is something that is real, that is not an appearance of something else, that is not an illusion, that is not a mirage. But to get to that, we have to be able to come to see that which we have been believing in, but wasn't actually true. I titled today, "The Person is a Mirage." And to make sure this is well understood, I don't want to present it like everything's an illusion, there's nobody here, nothing is real. I find that kind of teaching to be quite misleading, even though on one level it is true. But there has to be somebody here to recognize there's nobody here. An illusion can't have itself. There's something that isn't an illusion, something that isn't a mirage. And that's what we want to get to. That is self-realization. That is liberation. So when I say the person, what is the person? What do we mean by that? A lot of teachers use that term. Mooji uses it all the time. That's how he refers to what? What is he referring to? Well, let me give a simple example of this mirage of the person. Say you know somebody, and you have a friend, and there's this other person who is a mutual friend, but friend A, let's say, says, I don't really trust him. He's been saying a lot of stuff about people. He's not really honest, right? And you believe that. You believe this friend of yours. And so whenever you meet person B, you are interacting with them as somebody who isn't truthful, who isn't trustworthy, right? That's the image you hold of them. And that image of them is what you interact with. And you believe that image is actually them. Okay? So you're not interacting with them. You're interacting with the image you have of them. What you believe to be there. Right? Now, let's say that something happens and you find yourself stuck with this person somewhere, and you get into conversation and you begin to realize that none of what the other friend had said about them is true. That was simply their perception. You got kind of sucked into their mirage. And this is not theoretical. I'm sure we've all had this experience of meeting somebody and then them turning out to be quite different than what we thought they were, both positively and negatively, right? But while we were believing them to be one way, we were interacting with them. Right? Now, what is that? We have projected upon their behavior a preconceived notion of what that behavior means. In other words, who they are. Now, they are there. The behaviors are there. But our idea about them is a projection on them. Just like the mirage in the desert is a projection on the experience of the desert, is it not? I hold my hands up, it goes blurry. The desert's there, the heat, the sun, the thirst, and all of that, but the mirage isn't. There's nothing actually out there. And it doesn't matter how many self-help courses you take, much you apply the law of attraction, how many, how many skills you acquire. You hire the coach to learn how to run faster and farther. You're never going to get there because there's nothing there. It is an illusion. It is a mirage. But believing that it is actually something other than what is here, we interact with that belief. Now, if you didn't have that belief, if you were in the desert and you were thirsty and you knew for a fact that it was a mirage, even though you were having that experience, you wouldn't act on it. Now, this is the way a lot of our illusions are. I mean, we still talk about sunrise and sunset when in fact it's Earth turn, right? The sun isn't moving, at least relative to us, right? But the appearance to our senses is still the same. Now, what does that have to do with the person? Well, going back to that first example, you were interacting with an idea you had about them and not them. You were projecting upon what was there, right? A particular kind of functioning as an individual, your idea of who they were and interacting with that. Now, look at everything in life. Look at your life, because it's one thing to have an illusory impression of someone else, but what about yourself? Do we do that to ourselves? Well, the answer is yes, we do. We assume that our concept of ourselves is in fact ourselves. Now, what is actually there, right? Now, in any individual life, there's functioning going on, right? There's sensations and emotions, there's experiences, there's memories, there's history, there's the description. The body has certain characteristics, right? Its ethnicity, its gender, its location, the language it speaks. That's all there, right? And there's a natural functioning to it. Right? But when I look at the functioning and I imagine there is an entity there that is acting, I have projected the sense of self on something that doesn't have a sense of self. That is the person. That is what is meant by the person is a mirage. That is, it is a projection onto that which isn't a person, isn't an entity, isn't sentient or self-aware. That which is self-aware projects its own sense of self onto that which isn't. And this is the whole essence of the great illusion, the great mistake. And when that is seen through, the realization that I have been projecting me, my sense of self, onto that which is not a self, is self-realization. That's why the person is a mirage. That is, it is a projection on stuff that actually is there, but is only a functioning and not a self-aware entity. Imagine there's a robot that is so lifelike you can't tell the difference. And they're getting pretty close. They're getting pretty close to making lifelike robots. For the life of me, I have no idea what the point is, other than people are into it. But that's another. But I digress. There was actually somebody, I think he worked for Google, and there was some kind of AI. I think it shouldn't be called artificial intelligence. It should become simulated intelligence. That's what it should be called, because it's not intelligent. It is a functioning that imitates or simulates intelligence. And it'll never be conscious because it's a functioning, right? But there's this fellow at Google, and it came up with some kind of an algorithm, and he was convinced that it was self-aware. I don't know any of the details about it. It was a robotic thing. It was some kind of an AI program. And he was convinced it was self-aware. I mean, he managed to convince other people too. He even got so far as to contracting, I think, his senator and like to try to get some legislation to give this thing rights. Okay. Now, they're going to get so lifelike at some point that you're not going to be able to tell the difference. The only way we're not going to know, because we won't be able to inhabit them and see, is there anybody there? But we will project on it the sense of self. It's inevitable. We project it on our cars, right? We project it on all sorts of things. We anthropomorphize so many different things. You know, the world's like a bunch of cartoon characters that we're all projecting stuff on. And there will be AI rights groups. I'm sure it's coming. It's going to happen. Now, how do you tell? Well, you can't. And there's no difference between that, some AI thing that functions and reacts so well that we mistake it for a sentient being, and the organic robot that we call the body-mind complex. There's no difference. Except one will be made out of, circuits and silicon, the other's made out of carbon, but there's no difference. I recently posted in my private group, and if you're not in there, get there. It's on Facebook. About a fellow who's a neurosurgeon. He was a brain surgeon, right? So. And he, at I think 54 years old, had a near-death experience. Now, it was a unique one because the illness that he had literally destroyed his neocortex. There was no more memory, no capacity for language. He had no sense of who he was. It was not all of the areas that the materialistic scientists say is the seat of consciousness were destroyed. He shouldn't have had any consciousness at all. And he fell into the coma, and he had this remarkable experience. And it taught him, as a brain surgeon, that consciousness had nothing to do with the brain, that it was something else altogether. We are projecting upon the whole body-mind mechanism something it doesn't possess. So what isn't a mirage? Well, the easiest thing for me to do is to simply point your attention towards that which is hearing my words right now. What is it that actually cognizes, that point of cognition, that something says, I see that, and there's actually something there? The robot can say that. Siri on my phone can say it. But there's nobody there. It's just sounds. Right? But with you, there is somebody there, something that actually is. And that which is has projected itself on everything else. The eye doesn't see in the sense that I'm talking about it. The eye does not have self-awareness or cognizance of what it is seeing. It is a light collector, nothing more. It collects it, passes it off to a complex bunch of nerves and things, which translate it into electronic impulses, and it ends up being an image, right? It goes through filters and layers and meaning, and all sorts of stuff is attached to it. It finally gets to a place where there's an image formed. But what's seeing that image? This is something to deeply ponder and notice all the ways in which the moment you project that sense of I or self onto something else, you have given away your power, your authority, your happiness, your freedom, because you have endowed something that has no life with life, and then thought that it was dictating terms to you. Hopefully, this has been clear enough that you'll spend more time paying attention to the cognizance itself and less about what it's cognizing. More attention to the consciousness that is aware and less to what it is aware of. Our attention, out of habit, is constantly going to what it is aware of. It's going to the content. And I'm inviting you to pay more attention to that which is recognizing the content, or cognizing the content, that which is actually conscious, because obviously that is way more important than the content. And if you look closely, you find the content comes and goes, but this cognizing, whatever it is, doesn't. And I say whatever it is, but whatever it is, isn't it you? Isn't it you who are cognizing? So by asking you to pay attention to that consciousness, I'm asking you to pay attention to yourself. And gradually, sometimes quickly, that sense of self, the sense, the projecting of the identity onto something else dissolves. And it comes back home to the realization, oh, I am.